Hello, viewers who come back and watch us talk all the time. We appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Englewood Camera Shop Talk. Today, we're going to talk about something that we get asked about quite frequently.
Yep.
Settings.
In general.
But we said yesterday we would mention or we would talk about long exposures. We'll hit on that, but we're also going to try and talk about all other sort of genres of photography.
Right. Settings in general, because everyone's like, oh, what settings were you shooting on there? Or they're like, oh, what was your shutter speed there? Your aperture. Yeah. So, or what's the greatest ISO I can shoot at? And that's like a crazy question to try to answer.
Yep.
But,
I mean, I think the easiest way, we could just pull up each other's Instagrams and just say, yep, that's where you would do this or that. But anyways, long exposures, though, that's kind of, it's like it was cloudy, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went live. And we went live, and now it's not.
Dude, so we were talking long exposures, and you got the Milky Way shining behind you.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It goes.
Got my light. Well, it fades in and out.
Yeah, it's
exciting. Hayden's trying to do the blinds here.
Okay. Oh,
I'm very nervous because our plant is right there. Oh, watch it. It's Clyde. No, there we. Excellent.
Everyone tuning in. Mitch named his plant Clyde.
Yeah.
There we go. Look at that. Okay, give him a little ring light. That's great. Thank you, Vanna. She should come onto the camera and present. Present Hayden.
Come say hello.
For my excellent blind.
Yes, your amazing performance, ladies and gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Hayden Gray.
Here you go. Perfect. And so Milky Way stuff. Do you shoot a lot of Milky Way, Mitch?
No, I never get the opportunity to. Honestly, it's got to be one of the most fun things to shoot because you're out in the middle of nowhere and
quiet.
It's quiet. It's peaceful. If you're in a location where it's ideal to shoot something like that, generally you can see it with the naked eye too, which is I think one of the cool parts as well. I mean, you obviously get a more dramatic image than you could ever see with your eyes using a long exposure image, but if you can see it with your own eyes, it's pretty cool too, especially if you're from a very populated area and you don't normally see those things. So, but yeah, long exposures, that's pretty much what got me into photography, although I hardly ever do them now. Yeah, I think it was just the realization that you could like take a picture at night like that and get a perfectly exposed image. Which I just thought was mind-blowing when I first got into it. I was like, what? I could just
Well, if you're
leave it still for a second.
You can't really see the stars. And you see all these photos of like these awesome stars. Like you're from the Chicago area, pretty heavily polluted by light. And I'm from Las Vegas, which is just, the epitome of light pollution. And so
there's a literal beam shooting into the sky.
Yeah, shooting into space. And so I started, looking at all these photos when I got into photography, and I was like, man, I want to shoot pictures of the night sky. So I started with some crappy phone on my app on my phone. And I would just do it when my dog woke up really early in the morning, and I would just point at the sky, like leave it on the table. And that didn't work at all. And so I decided I needed
like an app on your phone. Did it like override your settings to give you a long exposure? Oh, that's kind of cool.
It was pretty neat. You could do 20-second exposure and whatnot, but
that's substantial.
Yeah, this is like an iPhone 4, which is, by the way, the greatest iPhone ever made.
Agreed.
It was just a good,
as far as design goes. Agreed.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
But yeah, I mean, and there's a million different ways you can go about it. It's different depending on the subject that you're shooting. Because like at night, if you're doing a street scene or something like that, you most likely don't want to have your lens shot totally wide open. But if you're shooting the Milky Way, it's like, okay, well now I need as much light gathering capabilities as I can get. So you're shooting pretty wide open. So there's kind of a mix up there with your, if you maybe are just starting out and you're going out to do long exposures, maybe you think everything should be wide open because you're thinking I need to gain as much light as possible, and that's not always the case. So
right.
I made that mistake. I just shot wide open everything. Well, I still shoot
wide open everything.
But I choose the right things to do it too. So.
There we go. But yeah, so let's like get down to business. So say I'm like shooting in Moab. All right. First of all, you got to think about what lens am I bringing to Moab?
Yeah.
Right. Do you want it? What aperture do you want to shoot at? Are you going to shoot a prime? Are you going to shoot? Are you going to shoot a wide telephoto?
What did you just say?
A wide telephoto. I mean, technically, that's a thing.
I guess.
A wide angle lens. I think it's on the box. I think if you buy a 16-35, it says wide telephoto.
Okay, I'll give you that. I think most people are going to start off with something like a 10 or an 11 millimeter to something. Right. They'll have like an 11 to 20 something. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the best way to start for a lot of people, even though that's not like the ideal lens and you can get a better lens, but you could find those for a pretty good price, especially used. Sometimes they're $300 to $400, sometimes $200 if you find like the Canon 10 to 18, right. If you have a Rebel series camera. They don't let in a ton of light, but in that case, if you're in Moab and you're trying to get that scene, mm-hmm. you want it to be wide open.
Right. So I would do I would point anyone and everyone in the direction of like a Tokina 11 to 16.
Yeah.
If you have a crop sensor. I love that lens. That was like my first wide angle. That was like the first lens I purchased for my starter Nikon when I first started. Mm-hmm. But it's like $250 used and like $350 for their new one. And it's a 2.8 throughout, and you can get some really good shots if you have a crop sensor DSLR.
For sure. That is a sweet lens. I actually like the build quality of that lens too. It feels pretty substantial. And then if you're on the mirrorless mount, if you're on a Fuji or a Sony APS-C, they've got that Rokinon or Samyang 12 millimeter f2. I used that one when I was starting out, and I still really like that lens. It's plenty sharp, but it's an f2.
Right.
And that's a prime. I think that one new is somewhere around $300 and used they're even less. So
you're most likely going to be manually focusing, so don't pay for something that is going to autofocus if you're shooting Milky Way.
You'll definitely be manually focusing.
Yeah.
Unless you're just like really, really lucky.
Unless you got some secrets that you need to tell us.
Yeah.
But full frame, when I went to Moab, I shot on that Sigma 14-1.8, and it was just
that's an exotic lens. It's
the most beautiful thing I've ever had in my hands. Don't go there.
But that is that if you had to ask me, I would say that's the same thing. I would say that 14 1.8 or something similar. I know the Sony G Master 24 was touted as a very good astrophotography lens, and that's their whole advertisement for that was that it had very minimal coma. So and that comes from shooting wide open at a really bright but very fine object like a star. You'll get some weird haloing around it.
Sure.
And that lens supposedly suppresses that effect very well. So,
Mitch, we were being rude. I gotta say good evening to Michael.
Oh, I didn't have my comments on.
Oh, there. Sorry, neither did I. I was in another tab. Good evening, Michael. Matt was on. Matt says he loves that 14-1.8. We were on that Moab trip together. So,
hello, Michael. It's nice to see you in the comments again. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Matt, hello to you too.
Yeah. So, but there are other lenses you could use, like.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's probably the most common for full frame people are using the 16 to 35 or similar.
Right. Exactly.
It's definitely fast enough to get the job done. And it's not a lens that you would only use for astrophotography. It has many other purposes as well. Exactly. Something like that 14 1.8 to me, that's like a very one-use type of lens.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's a very astro-heavy lens.
Specific. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can use it for other things. That obviously it's unique in the fact that it's very fast, but also very wide. But
I like before the 14-1.8, I used to use the Canon 14-2.8.
Yeah, that's
a nice. It's nice because it's so small.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a super compact lens. But it's a 2.8. I mean, a 2.8 is great for shooting Milky Way. It's where I would start. If you have a kit lens, you can shoot at 3.5, but then the camera that you're on probably isn't going to shoot at high ISOs very well.
Yeah, basically the 1.8 means you just have a little added flexibility,
right?
With your camera. You need a little bit more horsepower to get that lower noise, but you could get, especially if you're putting it on social media, you could get very similar results with a 2.8, almost the same half the time, and in a lot of cases you may never even notice the difference between the two. And majority of it depends on your conditions. If the sky is not very clear, you may see stars, but there could be a lot of haze in the sky still, even at night.
Right.
Light pollution is a problem, of course, and then just the overall clarity of the sky. If you go out and it's like a really cold night, you get that really crisp air, you're going to get a much sharper, cleaner shot of the sky, which is going to make a big deal.
When we were in Moab, it was like wildfires surrounding us. So like the sunsets were amazing.
Yeah,
you could almost kind of tell that like the sky wasn't as clear as it should have been.
Crisp as it could be, which is a look in its own.
Right.
If you're going for the faded look, it's personally I like it. I like the faded look.
Yeah.
But, I guess if you're trying to get maximum sharpness, conditions are so important when you're trying to do this kind of thing. So don't be so quick. If you go out and you shoot with a lens that you think is going to do well and it's maybe not optimal conditions, it might, that there may be nothing wrong with that lens, but you might just have a crappy sky that day. And so that's something that comes up a lot with long lenses, telephoto lenses. If it seems like it's not sharp at very distant subjects, it's like probably because the air sucks. And so that, I think that's overlooked a lot, but
for sure. So settings, Mitch, for people who are like, well, what settings should I shoot at?
Well, there's two things I think we get a lot of questions about for settings. One is purely just getting the Milky Way. The other one is there's always somebody going on a trip to Iceland, and they're always trying to get the Northern Lights.
Oh, the Northern Lights, and the waterfalls. That's another long
and the waterfalls. But the Northern Lights are really tricky. I've never shot them, but they move. So that's the tricky part. But they move quite a bit quicker than like the stars would. With the stars, you have like a general rule, like 10 to 15 seconds. Any longer than that, and you're going to start to get some streaking because your camera's locked down, but the Earth is still rotating.
Sure.
And with the Milky Way, it's not Milky Way. With the Northern Lights, it's moving a little bit quicker. It can be changing its brightness at times as well. So balancing that out is difficult. It helps to have a camera that can handle really high ISOs with the Northern Lights, because you're going to probably rely on that. And having like that 1.8 aperture is going to help even more. If you can get, the nice thing about Iceland is there's so many wide open expanses. You don't necessarily need the widest lens possible to get a good shot of that stuff, because you can get the horizon in the shot. Maybe you can get it almost a fairly tight shot. So something even like a 35 1.8 would work, or even a 50. I think sometimes I've seen some pretty good.
And your long exposure would definitely be cut down then. When you're shooting at those longer lengths. Yeah,
and that's if you're trying to get that detail in the Northern Lights in the sky, you need a slightly faster shutter speed than you might think when you're shooting the sky, as opposed to just trying to get the Milky Way. Or maybe you're just trying to make it look real blurry. Maybe you want that. But you could do either one. But if there's a waterfall, like you mentioned, you really don't need just about any picture you take is going to get that slow, smooth
right
effect. As long as you're past like a second or 2 seconds, you're going to get that. So
exactly. When I was in Moab, I was shooting at like 3200 ISO at 1.8 on that on my A7R3 at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think my exposure times were about 20 seconds.
20 seconds is,
but I was at like 14, so it's pretty wide. So the wider your focal length, the longer your exposure.
Or you see less of an effect on the stars.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true too. You can carry that over with stabilization as well. If you're worried about stabilization and you've got a really wide lens, it doesn't matter so much because your hand movements and stuff they're not accentuated quite as much as with like a 50 or longer.
Right.
Those lenses need more stabilization than something wider. Exactly. So the same is true with the stars moving.
Yeah.
For sure. A wider lens will handle it better. But and your tripod will have an easier time as well. Because you can still have some pretty substantial micro jitters in the tripod even after if it's windy. And you've got a strap on your camera and it's blowing around, even that can throw off your tripod.
Sure.
If you're using that 14 1.8, that's a pretty front heavy lens, and you've got it on like a Sony, like you had it on. That's a really lightweight body and it's very front heavy. It can sit there and kind of do this for a while. So you need to make sure you're setting. Well, speaking of settings, it's good to have some sort of a timer on the camera. It's best to have a remote trigger,
right?
And in that way, you don't touch the camera at all when you want to fire.
Yeah. But this is inspiring me, Mitch. Maybe we should set up a social distancing meetup to shoot the Milky Way.
Yeah, the most distant thing out there.
Boom. And we don't have to. We could all, make people feel comfortable, and we can help them out. But from a distance, and if they need our help, we can, go over stuff from, while we're out shooting. It would be pretty sweet.
I'm 100% for it.
And
I've been wanting to do stuff like that with the store for a while. It'd be cool. If you're in the comments now and you think that sounds fun,
interested. How much would you not think that's fun? Tell us in the comments below. No, we've tried. So this is the thing, Mitch. We've always tried to do these cool workshops with like Fuji or Sony or Tamron or combined. And then we always choose a location that's got really good night skies. And then it just completely late night thunderstorm, sleet, snow, rain. It just bombards us.
Well, there's a second thing we'll talk about with the settings. And it goes along with our presumed workshop that we may do, and it's which is completely speculation. We literally are just
don't ask when the workshop is, or how to sign up, or anything.
We're just spitballing things that we would like to do. But the with a workshop like that, and if you're going out to shoot the night sky, it is, if you could bring a tent, that's the best. If you got a couple days to sit in one spot, that's going to make such a difference, because you're probably not going to get lucky with a perfect weather day, or a perfect clear sky. And like you said, every time we try to do one of those things, we just get unlucky. If we were to do a workshop like that, I think it would be best if it was like a 2-day thing.
Like one day you kind of learn about doing the settings and you go give it a shot at night, and the next day you continue to learn about the settings. That way you just have 2 nights to like fail or not fail. Yeah.
And that'll carry over. That sort of mentality carries over to all different types of photography, largely landscape, but a ton of different types of photography. But that would be important to keep in mind if you're going out to shoot that. And then what else for settings? I mean, we touched on the shutter speed, generally like 10 to 20 seconds, depending on your focal length and what's in the sky. Maybe you do have clouds in the sky and you like the way they look. It's going to be hard to get both the stars and the clouds really sharp. Sometimes if there's lightning going on, the lightning can sort of freeze that area around where it struck, almost like popping it with flash, except it's its own flash. And that can be, you can kind of bring that into the equation, but it's it's all very none of it's under your control, which is the hard part. So you're always at the mercy of how the weather is acting. If you're doing a long exposure in the city and you've got cars going by, you've got lots of taillights, headlights, things like that, you probably want all that to look sharp, and you got real fine edges and light. Probably, maybe you don't. Maybe everybody's different.
Yeah.
But to do that, you can still get away with a long exposure. In that case, you could do a longer shutter speed and get a narrower aperture to get more in focus.
Exactly, and that helps with and you can shoot at a really low ISO,
mm-hmm.
and because you don't want a bunch of grain in your cityscape.
Right. Something like that, you might even go into bulb mode for.
Right.
If you're not familiar with bulb mode, you're going to want one of those triggers, one of those remote triggers, because you can lock the shutter down. But basically, what bulb mode is you hold the shutter button down, and when you let go, that's when the shutter, that's when that exposure is over. So you can leave it sitting there theoretically forever, but most people will do it for like maybe 10 minutes. Some people do up to like 3 hours, depending on what they're shooting. But
or where they are. I mean, I wouldn't do a cityscape at 10 minutes. I might do a cityscape at
but it's tough. It's tough to be limited to. A lot of cameras are limited to 30 seconds.
Right.
And maybe that's not enough, or maybe
especially if you're like waiting for traffic.
Yeah. Bulb mode also really helps for shooting waves. If you're trying to get the waves crashing up on a beach or something like that, you could pretty much just time it. You could sit there with the trigger, wait for the wave to hit where you want, start it, and then when the wave's gone, let go, because the waves are pretty unpredictable. So styling it into one shutter speed might not be the best for each wave that comes by. So you can do it kind of by feel if you get if you practice it a little bit. So
man, long exposures, man, telling you, it's
and then you could throw how people had to hold real still for long exposures for
early
portraits.
I think that's why everyone's got this like terrible face.
Sit there for an extended period of time while you get your photo taken.
Exactly. They're not super happy about it.
Yeah.
But
what else do we shoot? So I mean, when I shoot planes, when I shoot like aircraft, which I love to do, I love to go to air shows. That's a real tricky one, and so I'll normally be in like shutter priority for that.
Okay.
And because every plane is, sometimes you get a prop plane going by, and the shutter speed you're using for a prop plane is going to be maybe dramatically different than what you want to get for like a jet. If a jet's going by and it's got the vapor clouds coming off of it because it pulls heavy G's, I don't really want a long shutter speed for that, because I want to capture those details of the vapor coming off. I want to get those little edges going everywhere in the sky. With a prop plane or helicopter, anything with a spinning rotor, you don't want that fast of a shutter speed, because if you go too quick, you're going to freeze that rotor or propeller, and it looks really weird when it's frozen and the plane is flying. So it's you get that motion blur, so you're somewhere around 2/50th, the 500th of a second. The slower you can go the prop plane, I feel, the better. It comes with practice, and then if they're coming really low, you can get some of those pan shots. But I feel like it's easier to get panning shots with planes because they're moving quite a bit faster than cars.
Right.
If you're trying to get a panning shot of a car, it's like you're really dancing between some really slow shutter speeds, so it's hard to get a sharp shot.
Right. And you're like,
yeah. But a plane, sometimes they're going 400 miles per hour, and that's to make a 200th of a second seem slow. So but you could still get a pretty sharp shot of the plane that way.
Yeah. Mitch, can we take a break real quick? I want to take a cat commercial break.
Commercial break.
It's a cat commercial break from your
brought to you by the Cat Daddy.
I'm the Cat Daddy, and look at this. These cats, they just had dinner, and now they're just
straight up cuddling.
Look at these guys. They're brothers, all right? So they're look at them cuddling. They're hugging each other and stuff. So they're like, "What are you doing?"
Hayden, you gotta look at Kyle's kitties.
Look at this cat dad. I'm the cat dad, and these are my cats. So
the way they're cuddling.
We got Pills on the left, and we got Porter on the right. They're BFFs, and that has been your cat break in today's Camera Shop Talk.
A fine distresser.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So, back to settings. I don't know. We can talk about portrait settings if you want. There's the thing about portrait settings. Maybe we should talk about focus settings for
focus settings for events / portraits.
Exactly, aka like a wedding or something like that. Yeah.
At a wedding, I think you just got to get used to flipping between AF single,
right,
and AF servo.
So say your bride and groom are walking down the aisle. You most likely want to be in continuous autofocus because they're continuing to walk towards you. If you're on single, they're going to keep walking past you. And this is something that we tell a lot of people that come into the shop who ask to get their cameras calibrated because their lenses aren't working, but really they're shooting the wrong focus mode.
The wrong focus mode can have a terrible effect on your photos.
Yeah. Michael says for nightclubs, and this is a good point too. If Michael was maybe hinting towards this, but if you have a speed light on, right, and you're shooting in a nightclub, maybe you don't have your camera on continuous autofocus, because if you put it on single autofocus, at least this is my experience with Canon, it shines the little red infrared and helps you autofocus in that dark situation.
And I know Michael you have an A9, and that camera, fantastic continuous autofocus capability, but there is a limit. And if you're getting really, really, really dim conditions, you're really in a dark place, like a nightclub like that, maybe if the performer is lit with like a red light or something like that, and it's very difficult to focus on, there's almost no contrast then when you've got a red light like that. So the camera actually will be a little bit more accurate and quicker to focus if you're in a single autofocus mode where it focuses one time and doesn't continuously focus. And the reason for that is it'll rely more on contrast detect autofocus rather than phase detect, which in low light is more accurate. So you just need to be aware, though, when you're shooting that way, that if something moves, it's not going to be in focus.
Right.
So that's part of the challenge. But the that I tend to use DMF on a Sony in low light, direct manual focus. I like that one because you can, if the camera if it just is failing to focus and it's hunting back and forth while you're holding the shutter button down, you can manually override it with the focus ring and just force it to be in focus. But it's a little bit more accurate when you use that mode.
Sure. I want to show you a photo of a concert and a good example of like motion in a concert. Hold on, it's my friend Alden. His last name is Bonecutter. What a savage last name, right? Am I
right? That is a savage last name.
But he shoots at Mission Ballroom, and this is a mosh pit, but it's a good example of kind of shooting in a club with motion, but also taking advantage of the people who are not moving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's intentional movement.
Right.
Yeah.
So I imagine he's shooting at like maybe a half second or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really cool image. I love the color in that picture. But
yeah,
I think what's hard sometimes is knowing when to switch those modes. And really a lot of it's just going to come from trial and error. And I think you'll know when things start to go wrong, when you start missing shots. I don't try to promote too much chimping. Chimping meaning you take a picture and you look down at the screen and make sure you got the shot. You don't have to do it every time, but it's good to check every once in a while that your shots are coming out.
Right. Well, the nice thing about mirrorless cameras is chimping is so easy because you can just look at your image in your viewfinder.
Yeah.
You know,
but you could be shooting accidentally all night not know that you were in a single autofocus mode where it doesn't continuously track. And then you'll get home and look at all your pictures and be like, oh, it's a hair off everywhere because of that. And so it's good to check periodically while you're shooting, especially if you're moving from scenario to scenario. You mentioned with the bride and groom walking down the aisle. Maybe check those photos.
Right, exactly.
I don't know. You can't recreate that moment, but maybe you can make up for it by getting something else somewhere down the line. But that's I think the best way to know when to switch. And the more you do that, the more you screw up, the more you'll know exactly where it's going to be needed to switch to a continuous mode versus a single autofocus mode.
Can I tell you a horror story that happened to me 2 seasons ago?
Yeah.
It's opening day, all right? So that just sets the scene. I don't know if Matt's still listening, but he's going to laugh. It's opening day, and every opening day, I take a picture of the front office staff. So they all come out at like a specific time. It's like 8:15 because the bleachers in left field are no longer in like the shadow of the sun, but shadows of the concourse. And so everyone comes, and I take a team photo. I stand on this big ladder, or the front office photo. And I changed his focus setting to single autofocus because I just wanted to focus. Boom. I didn't want it to change. It was continuous back button, so I didn't really have to. I could have focused, let off the button, and just taken the picture. But I changed it to single point or single autofocus, and I never told him that I did it, and didn't change it back after. And so now Matt is shooting the players running on the field. He's shooting that.
Why'd you do that?
I know it was bad. And so it's snowing, and which didn't help at all because now the focus is grabbing snowflakes in front of the players' faces.
Oh no.
Yeah. And then and so he had all these cool photos of the players running, and luckily he had a second body that he was also shooting with. But it was a bummer because the body that he was using that I had used was the wide angle one, which is like the more versatile one that he was taking more photos with. So there were a lot of photos that weren't in focus, and it was like dudes like blowing, you could see their breath and stuff. It was pretty sweet, and I felt super bad for about a couple of days, and then I got over it. But always, if you're gonna change the settings on someone's camera, change them back. But that's
I think you're a good person to explain since I don't use it and I have my own opinion on it. But you mentioned back button focusing.
Here he is. Boom. Hey, coming in with the eye roll. Matt would have had the cover of Sports Illustrated if he'd had one of those photos in focus. Joking. Back button autofocus.
Yeah, we get that question a lot. Should you use it or should you not use it? I have my own opinion on this, but I'll let you.
When I shoot baseball, I'm using back button I use back button autofocus for everything now. I just like it because I feel like now my finger is just a trigger and doesn't have a function of trying to focus. I don't know, it's a mind thing maybe. And I like the fact if I'm shooting AF autofocus like continuous that I can just track, boom, boom, and so I'm not worried about holding my finger down in the first place. But the other thing is it's just nice to be able to focus on something, take it off, know that the focus isn't going to change, and take a picture.
Yeah, I'll give it that advantage for sure. It's nice that way you don't really need to switch modes so much, even though you did on Matt's camera and ruined his life. But you could effectively, if the way you treat it, it acts as both a single autofocus mode or a continuous autofocus mode without changing modes, which is probably the biggest advantage to it, in my opinion. I think if I was using a DSLR, I'd probably do it too, maybe.
Right.
But I don't like it on mirrorless cameras with tilt screens because I like to use my thumb on the shutter button, but then I got to reach all the way down to a back button to get it to focus. And Michael Myers says he hates it too. And we both have the same camera, so maybe we have the same experience. But that's my thing about it. And it's a comfort thing for me now too. I just like if I only have use of one hand for whatever reason. Maybe I'm like reaching really far one direction or something like that. I might not have a really great grip on the camera. And so I hate when I need both my thumb and my index finger to be in a specific place to take a photo. So
sure.
That I would say is my biggest downside to it. I don't hate its functionality or its the reason behind it. It's a comfort thing. So maybe that's really what it comes down to for a lot of people is the comfort.
I also don't have to worry. Like I don't want to worry about when I press my shutter button, the focus changing again.
Yeah, that's valid too. But if you are doing weddings, it makes some sense to do the same thing, to use back button focus, because if you're shooting the reception or something, everybody's dancing and stuff like that, maybe you do have a flash and you've got it sort of in that realm of focus where you need it to be and you're just firing away. If you had it wired to focus when you half press the shutter, it could be hunting in and out and missing every shot. So there's a different way to do it for everyone.
Right. I feel like the back button focus is the inverted, not inverted part of like video games for the video games, but for the camera.
Nobody does inverted for shooters. What?
I don't know. My old roommate had his. He liked his inverted.
Really?
Yeah.
If it's a flight simulator or anything that involves flying, I have to be inverted. I gotta pull down to go up and push forward to go down. I have to. If I don't have that, I'm like zoinked out. I can't.
Yeah, toast.
Yeah. But
where is Glenn? Huh?
Yeah, I think Saturday. We're too late for Glenn. It's like we're not his morning routine anymore.
Well, it's Saturday in Australia, so he might be doing things with his family.
Hey, did you get a haircut yet?
No, dude, I haven't got a haircut yet.
Have you know when mine's when is our haircut scheduled? Hayden?
What?
Our haircut is not till June 19th.
June 19th.
Oh my gosh, Kyle, put that hat back on.
Dude, it's crazy. This is why I wear a hat at the store. I took my hat off when we first started working at the shop, and I said, Les, is it cool if I wear a baseball hat in the store until I get a haircut? And he goes, well, and I took my hat off, and he goes, okay. So but if I could figure out a way to style it, man, I don't know, maybe I should just let it flow. Gotta let it flow.
Just embrace the
craziness.
Just embrace it.
I think I'm gonna start helping people,
but I'm just
you just let it go. So look, oh man, if I can get it to stay up like this, it's perfect. So what a wild world. And look at it, it's like so much hair that it's making my hat tighter on my head because it's like my hat is not supposed to. I'll never be able to wear this hat again after I get a haircut.
Yeah,
because my hair has just stretched it.
Oh gosh.
So thanks COVID-19 ruined a great hat.
So many casualties.
I look way older now because like as my hair gets longer, all my gray hairs get longer and they're easier to see. So. But my girlfriend says she loves a silver fox. So,
oh wow,
here I am.
Fantastic, Michael. You say even on your D700 you couldn't get used to it. Yeah, I mean it's different. Like we said, it's different for everybody. There's a lot of things that are different for everybody. There's some people that just don't ever use continuous.
Right.
They just don't like it, so. There's some people that only manually focus. I think who somebody bought a Nikon, not Nikon, the Sigma, the new mirrorless Sigma, the full frame thing, the little cute little box thing. And I had mentioned that like Tech Art manual autofocus adapter, and he's like, autofocus? I don't need that. And so I was like,
I have a funny story for you. His name was Eddie Butler. He was a pitcher for the Rockies, but then he was on the Cubs. He got traded to the Cubs.
What? That guy was traded up to the Cubs?
Yeah. And so he was at a golf event. It was like our golf nonprofit event, and he's sitting there, and I'm done shooting my hole. I did like the grip and grin margarita hole where everyone comes before they tee off. I get a group photo, And it's my favorite event of the year because I can also drink margaritas while it's happening. And so and then I always get like a roadie and put it in my golf cart and drive away. But I run into Eddie Butler. He just bought a 7D Mark II and a Sigma 70 to 200, and he went up to the dirt racing track up here near Bandimere.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey Kyle, you gotta check out these photos." He had his camera with him, and he goes, "I was shooting all manual." He's like, "You'd be so proud of me." She goes, "Dude, Eddie Butler." And I said, "These are pretty cool." And I said, "They're kind of out of focus though." And he's like, "Oh, I was shooting manual focus." I'm like, "Why are you shooting manual focus?" He goes, "Well, you shoot on manual, you got to shoot on manual focus." I'm like, "That's not true." I go, "When I take your pictures while you're pitching, I am autofocusing on you because like you're moving." That's how it works. But yeah, I love it when some people come in and say, "Oh, I shoot all manual, including manual focus." I'm like, ooh. I mean, teach their own. When I had my A7S, I was adapting my old Nikon glass to it, and I was shooting concerts just strictly manual focus. With a peaking focus, and it was really fun actually, and it reminded me of like.
And you were sort of forced to do that because that camera cannot focus.
Right, in general, yeah. But I loved it, and it made me like really like enjoy old concert photography from like the 70s and the 80s, like the 70s before autofocus and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff.
It's funny when everyone's like, "Oh, you only manual focus." It's like, yeah, man, that's what they used to do. They used to not be autofocus.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. It's the same effect as shooting film to me. Right. It slows you down, makes you think about that frame a little bit more. Mm-hmm. When you were we talked about this the other day with the frames per second, relying on having a ton of frames per second. When the tool becomes so powerful that you just assume it can do it all for you, mm-hmm. you start to take really bad pictures, and you're like, "Why did I spend all this money on this?" This machine that isn't doing it for me. The camera's never going to do it for you.
Right.
I think with all this AI and stuff going around, it's going to come down to your own creativity at the end of the day. So, and that some of those tools, when you limit yourself, you force creativity. So that's something to keep in mind. So
if Matt is still here, he would say, "I'm the king of bat on ball pictures. And I shoot like 2 frames every swing." So it's like, I don't know. I just have a knack for it, man. I don't like burning up my shutter either. I don't want to like put.
Oh, right.
I own my own gear. I shoot an entire baseball season. I don't want to put like 300,000 clicks on it in a season.
That's why I got rid of that D500 so quick. I think that camera's only rated to like 200,000 shots.
Right, and you're just cruising.
Every picture I took, I was like, "That's one more towards 200,000."
Yeah, and an edit after you shoot 14 frames a second and you just let it rip.
Yeah,
like you want to know who shoots the most out of anyone I've ever seen is the Japanese photographers that come and follow like the Japanese baseball players around. Mm-hmm. They come in the photo well and they just lay on their shutters. It's just they must shoot 100,000 frames in a series.
Well, I mean, if they're in Japan, they're not too far from the manufacturer, so they can.
No, they're not in Japan. They're in the United States, man.
But
if they go back.
Yeah, if they go back, and they're from Japan, like you said, right?
That's true.
So they live there, so they could just run over to Canon and be like,
"Yeah, replace my shutter.
New shutter, please." And they're like, "Okay."
Their newspapers probably doing it for them, but I was just amazed. I'm still amazed whenever I sit next to the Japanese photographers, like when Ichiro came to Denver.
Yeah. And they just opened fire, huh?
The second he stepped on the field, it was just like it was so crazy. But like the second the pitcher or the batter moves, it's just like boom, boom, boom. And they must have 900 photos that look the same. I just like would hate to have to pick through their selects.
I would too. I hate culling. I don't like culling.
It's hard to do. So,
but what other? You got like a final tip for everyone with settings?
Something
that's commonly misunderstood.
I would say maybe go into your menu and set up a limiter on like your ISO or like your shutter speed or aperture. So don't let your shutter speed go below a certain speed or above a certain speed, and don't let your ISO go above like 6400.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I would second that. Same thing. I do that in my camera. That way you can leave it on aperture, priority, or program even, and just let the camera run. And it's not going to give you these, as long as you understand which settings are going to give you a blurry or noisy image, then you can kind of set it to where you deem those limits to be acceptable, and then you can you almost turn your camera into a point and shoot at that point.
Right.
You don't really have to think about settings.
Yeah. I mean, these cameras are smart, but they think they can do more than they should be doing. So like if you have your camera on, say at Coors Field, if you had your camera on auto ISO a couple of years back before we got LEDs, you're shooting like 12,000 ISO. Like,
yeah,
you're just
a lot of cameras. That's way too high.
And you're just like, holy crap. And so like, the camera's not that smart, That's what I would say.
I'm sorry, Mom. We're making my mom baseball.
Too. I was thinking today that hockey announced that they're coming back and how the playoff structure was going to be and stuff like that. And dude, I'm so ready to just sit on a couch and watch hockey or just any sport. So
I got a NASCAR race coming up.
Dude, Saturday. NASCAR's been racing, and that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, my driver's finally coming back for at least this one race coming up this weekend, which I'm kind of bummed about because I'll be at work for like half of it. But
did Jimmy Johnson?
No. AJ Allmendinger is.
I don't know who that is, man. I know Jimmy Johnson is the GOAT, Jeff Gordon, and then there's Martin Truex Jr. He's from Denver, isn't he?
His team is from here.
Okay.
He's not from here, I don't think, but he's
American.
Pretty sure he's one of those North Carolina dudes. But
okay. The big guys that I followed when I was like I liked the video games, the NASCAR video games, because you could fly back, you could drive backwards
and just cause the biggest wreck.
Or like try to get around, get through them. And but I liked using Kyle or Kevin Harvick because they were from Las Vegas.
Kevin Harvick, man, he's been around a long time, dude. He's still driving. Those guys are so they're like fighter pilots.
Yeah,
they're just so zoned in. Anyways, all right. So we'll maybe talk about settings some more again tomorrow. Even we didn't really touch on all of it.
Doing it tomorrow. We're tomorrow's Saturday, man. We're working, and then we're just enjoying the weekend.
I don't keep track of days, so anymore.
Anyway, a day is a day. But Mitch and I will be at the camera shop tomorrow, 9 till 3 p.m. So bring your face cover and we got the hand sanitizer, and come into the shop, buy something new with your Trump check. So this has been Camera Shop Talk for the 29th of May.
We're almost cruising on through this year, everyone.
Yeah. Boom.
Getting through it.
Yeah. We're almost halfway through. It's amazing.
It's just a year-long day.
Yeah. A year-long day. All right. I'm out of here. I'm going to go. My cat stopped cuddling each other. So that means they're about to fight and play. So I got to, go be the referee.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have fun with that.
Of course. I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see everyone else on Monday.
Adios.